Here we go again, and it's week three previews. Oh, it says week two there, so it is week three, you guys. Even though the people who won probably hope they get a repeat of week two, but here we are, week three dynasty.
Yeah, week three dynasty. I mean, I'm always excited for dynasty. I mean, I have said that I am in a 2-year rebuild, but I love dynasty. It is a different environment altogether. Playing, two quarterbacks. Having to make sure you have people. You can't trade everybody away. Make sure you have good players for next year. I love it. It's great. And now we're going to week three for season number 3. First up, we have Vlad Jr. Crew versus the Illuminati. Vlad Jr. Crew is 2-0, and he has the most points for in Dynasty versus the Illuminati, who is actually surprisingly, he is ranked 10th for points for. He's actually not in last place. There's 6 other teams that are worse than him, and that is kind of sad for those 6 teams.
Yeah, totally. Vlad is hitting home runs, and he hit a big home run against my brother last week, and he can hit a big home run with a win this week and be the first dynasty owner to 20 wins lifetime. So I know he's going to be obviously shooting for that, and this is a divisional battle. So obviously these guys do have a history with playing one another, and right now Vlad Jr. Crew is 3-2 lifetime versus the Illuminati. So it's been a pretty close matchup. And, if you recall, Robert had a great first year. Obviously, last year, not so great with the Hugh Jackson Award, but good enough to beat me last week. And obviously, he's hoping to ride that momentum into a W here. Unfortunately, I just don't see it. My original pick was to go with Vlad Jr. Crew, and I am going to stick with that original pick. Even though, Ronald Jones doesn't look good. Kenyon Drake doesn't look good, but Rondale Moore looks really good, and your tight end room is really good. And then all of a sudden you got Cordero Patterson. So, some things went your way, and I think you're going to get the W again here.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, just looking at his team, let's actually start with the Illuminati. He has Tom Brady, Ezekiel Elliott, Fournette, Jamal Williams. That's a pretty good 1, 2, 3, 4 from the quarterback room. He also has Teddy Bridgewater, who is playing the Jets, who, let's be honest, he's probably going to throw 2-3 touchdowns. I hope he throws 2-3 touchdowns in the LLC. And then the tight end room, he does have Jared Cook and Jack Doyle, who Jared Cook, I don't know if you actually watched the Chargers game. He dropped a couple passes, but it looks like he had 5 targets last week. So if he catches those 2 passes, he actually has a lot better stat line than what I thought he was going to get over in Chargers land. And Justin Jefferson, Demarcus Robinson, and Watkins versus Aguilar, Cup, and Moore. On paper, they're pretty even to me. I mean, Cup is better than Robinson and Watkins, but Justin Jefferson, I would have Justin Jefferson out of all 6 of those guys I just named. And to me, where Vlad Jr. Crew wins this game, it is Kenyon Drake versus Miami. Is Josh Jacobs going to play? Kenyon Drake is going to get passes. You will get a couple rushes as well. And when it comes down, is the tight end room and the flex, and the flex are better for Vlad Jr. Crew. And I am also going Vlad Jr. Crew. Next up, we have Philly Miracle Men, who have the worst points for, and versus Likely Losers, who's also 0-2, and they are both in the basement, and they are both in the same division. Likely Losers has the 3rd worst points for, but he also has one of the worst points against. He's actually 2nd for most points against, which I was actually surprised to see. It doesn't help when you're scoring not a lot of points and your opponents are putting up points all over you.
Yeah, not a great title defense so far for Stewart and Likely Losers, and we always commented how'd this guy win games, and he just kept winning. He's won. He's actually struggled versus you guys. He's 2-3 lifetime versus you guys, and I'm sure you'd love to keep that edge. And the good news for you guys, you have a starting quarterback. You got Justin Fields finally making his first career start. I'm sure it feels good for you guys to know at least you'll start getting some points out of there. Looking at the success story so far for Likely Losers, finding KJ Osborne, sure he probably found him off the waiver wire. This guy's putting up fantasy points like you wouldn't believe. He's totally off the radar still. But I look at the rest of the roster. When you're relying on a waiver wire ad like Jaquez Patrick, who we don't even know what his role is going to be. Again, that's a boom or bust pick. But I still think taking the risks, you got to take risks to win. And I got likely losers originally winning this one, and I'm going to stick with it.
Yeah, I honestly had likely losers winning this one. I also had myself going 0-5. So I'm just going to put that out there as well. I know we talked about me getting the Hugh Jackman Award. I don't think it's kind of fair just because I did say I was rebuilding versus other teams who are 0-2. But looking at, like you said, I am stoked that Fields is going to play. As I said in the LOC preview, he might rush for 2 touchdowns, but he also might throw 3 interceptions. We'll see how that goes. And then my running back room, as we knew going into the draft, is dreadful. I mean, I do have Harris. I do have Gainwell, who's actually what I thought exactly he was going to be. He's going to get a few rushes. He's going to get those catches. He's probably going to score a touchdown at once every 3 games. And, he definitely got that 2-point conversion last week. But then kind of looking at my wide receivers, they're not as good as I actually thought they were going to be. Corey Davis, I just assumed Jack Wilson would be better than he is. But he's hot garbage right now since last week. Rager was Rager. We all know what he was going to be. Terrace Marshall, I think he is a year out from being dominant. But I do get Will Fuller back this week, who I'm excited to see how he does. But I also don't have a backup quarterback. But likely losers does have Matt Ryan, but it's not going to matter. I am still going 0-3 this week. Next up, we have Subotica Spartans versus Orange Crush, and it's the second meeting already. So what do you got for this one?
Well, I originally had Adrian winning the first one there, but this time I have him losing, and guess what? I'm gonna stick with that because again, what happened to him in the LOC? Tua goes down. He's clearly a Miami Dolphins fan. Not a good scene. Obviously, in Dynasty, it's not a great scene because all of a sudden you're going to be missing that one slot in your quarterback hole. It's a 2-3 lifetime record right now for Adrian with Dusan. So if Dusan wins this one, it's an even Steven. And then again, a lot of question marks on Adrian's side with Deontay Johnson. I mean, the knee injury didn't look good. Looks like Evan Ingram, he's looking to hope to give him a shot, but then what kind of role is he going to have? So I think this time around, Dusan is getting them at the right time in week 3. And Seattle and Minnesota, Kirk Cousins, we saw what Kirk Cousins done for Bare Naked Ladies in the LOC. And Daniel Jones, this guy's put up a lot of points. We look at Cousins and Jones on the Spartan side, are like, those guys are bums, but guess what? They haven't been. And I'm going to go with Dusan and Subotica Spartans.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Looking at the 2 teams, I also I think we've actually, so far up to right now, we have picked every team to win. We have had the same record. I actually have a better record than you in the LOC, but we have matched every game so far in Dynasty. Looking at the 2 teams, you got Cousins playing Seattle, you have Mahomes playing Chargers. The question, and it really comes down to this: what is Mahomes going to do? Is he going to put up 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns? Will he be mediocre? I honestly think it might be a shootout again in LA. I believe they're actually playing KC versus Cousins. He's going to put up points. Looking at the 2 teams, the point difference for points for is about 40 points. And looking at the running back room, I think that is why Aaron Jones and CEH has been a bum, but Aaron Jones has been putting up points. AJ Dillon is not doing anything. Aaron Jones had 42 points last week, had 3 receiving touchdowns and 1 rushing touchdown. And I think that is why Orange Crush is up by 40 points over Subotica Spartans. And the only reason between Jones and Mahomes, if you take those 2 guys away or make them average for their position, Spartans might have more points for. And kind of looking at the roster for Orange Crush, you have Pascal, who has scored a touchdown each week, but you have Johnson and Ingram, who are injured. I mean, Ingram's injured every freaking day, I'm pretty sure, of his NFL career. And then kind of looking at anything else, Crush does not have a secondary quarterback, and I think that is huge in the LOC in Dynasty here. And versus Daniel Jones playing Atlanta, and Atlanta looks horrible. They have 3 touchdowns to Hurts. And that is why I am also going Spartans. Next up, you have Autumnus primed 0-2 versus Bills Mafia. Is this a must win for Prime? I think the answer is, if you're 0-2, the answer is always yes. It is a must win if you want to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think Autumnus Prime's in serious trouble. And, I think he might have won the Ming division in the first year from what I recall. And since then, he's just been a joke in the Ming division. And Bill's Mafia, one thing I'll say about him, I was high on him in our preseason, previews. And I'm still high on him, and he's proven it. He's got over 300 both games. And, again, consistency in the points does really tell you a lot about a team, as much as I want to say it doesn't this year because my team in the LOC hasn't been doing that great. But it's true. If you can put up the consistent over 300 in Dynasty, and I think in the LOC, it's like getting over 225, you're a good team, right? And I think this is just going to show that Bill's Mafia is just way better all the way down the line. And, Chris Godwin should have a huge game with AB out. He should get more targets. And then he just picked up Brandon Cooks in a trade, which I thought he overpaid, but obviously filling a hole after that Debo trade. It's kind of backfired for him so far.
Yeah, so far so good for Bill's Mafia. He has the second most points for. I actually just realized that Vlad Jr. Crew has the most points for it, but he also has the fourth most points against, and he's still 2-0. And looking at everybody else who is 2-0, the next person with the most points for against is at 13th place. That's 2-0 points against. So that's crazy how, well he's doing. But going back to Bill's Mafia, he has the fifth most points against and the second most points for. So it could be anybody's game. But looking at the two teams themselves, as you said, Bill's Mafia, I was high on him started the season. I had him going 8-5. I was very low on Autumnus Prime. I had him going 0-13, and I'm still going to stick with the 0-13 for him. To me, even though Hyde, had the RB1 status for Jacksonville week 1, he did diddly squat last week. He had 7 yards. Michonne, or Sonny Michel, he did have 46 rushing yards. So Henderson did go down, which actually affects Bill's Mafia's team. So it really comes down to, will Henderson play? What's Harris doing? Chase Edmonds. But just looking up and down the lineup for both teams, Prime's team is not that good. He has Kittle, and that's about, and DeAndre Hopkins. And besides those two, you're not going to win with, and Lamar Jackson. He has 3 good players. Everybody else is okay. And that is why I got Bill's Mafia winning.
Interesting fun fact about both these teams.
Sure.
I got 2 of the top 10 current wide receivers in fantasy. One from Autumnus Prime, Amari, and Debo from Bill's Mafia in separate trades. So thanks, guys.
Wow. There you go. You can't beat that. Again, 2 top 10 wide receivers. So looking at the next game, we got Curly Lamborghini versus Randall Flag football. And is this a must win for Curly? As I just said, if you're 0-2, every game's a must win because you do not want to go 0-3 if you plan on making the playoffs. If you go 0-3, more than likely your $50 or your $40 and $50 Canadian, whatever it is a donation to the league. And we'll see you again next year. And that's when you start, making trades to go for next year.
Yeah, well, it is a must win for Curly. And one thing he's got going for him is he has 3-1 lifetime versus Brian and Randall Flag. But, even having Kyler Murray this year, I think pretty sure he's actually the number 1 fantasy current player right now. He's still 0-2. So that says a lot to me. Obviously, he has Mac Jones as his second quarterback, hoping to bring him along and have him do well. But I think what it is guys like DJ Shark, like I've been saying, he wasn't a WR1. He hasn't done much, right? And Brian just has Ridley, Metcalf, AJ Brown. These guys should be able to produce, even if they haven't already. And then, of course, having Aaron Rodgers and surprise Sam Darnold. And because of that, Sam Darnold should put up a ton of points tomorrow, you got to think. And I'm going Randall Flag.
Yeah, you said Kyler Murray is the number 1. He does have Kyler Murray. He also has Tyler Lockett, who is number 6. And then he also has Tyreek Hill, who is 22nd most points player in the LOC. So you would think his 0-2 record would be much better, but then you kind of look at the rest of his team, and he has He is ranked 10th or 11th for points for at 521. And those three guys I just told you about that he has have about 200 of his points. So they're three guys have a little over, little under 40% of his points. So like you're not going to win when three guys have 40% of your points, and your team is not that good though. I mean, what more can you say? 40%, and I had Randall flag football winning this, and I'm still going to go with that. And all your points that you said are valid. And honestly, besides Tony Pollard as his running back, I don't like his running backs, and I'll leave it as that. Next up, we have Bare Naked Ladies versus Unnecessary Roughness. They're both 1-1. And it says this is a nudge game. I think this is a grudge game. I think this is going to, whoever wins this game has a shot to make the playoffs, and stays in contention for, the division. Honestly, if you lose this game, you're going to go 1-2. And, you're playing in the same division as Orange Crush we already talked about. You're also playing division with Subotica Spartans. And you got to keep pace with Crush. And honestly, if you lose this one, you are also donating your money.
Yeah, totally. I mean, when I look at this one, again, division game, and it is a nudge for who is going to try to go forward, obviously. And, I think I originally had Milan winning this one. I'm sticking to it. We see that Joshua is selling. He sold just Brandon Cooks recently. We'll see how much of a drop-off it is getting McCole Hardman. I think it is. The problem right now with Bare Naked Ladies, he has two rookie quarterbacks, and we all know how rookies perform in real life. This is Dynasty. It's supposed to emulate real life, and he's had his struggles. Zach Wilson, you guys know I've been saying I wasn't high on this guy from the get-go. Obviously, he's struggled. I think he has minus points on the year. So I think that's going to continue here and be a factor in the win. And I think Dak Prescott, opening night in Dallas, it will put up enough for Unnecessary Roughness to win as well.
Yeah, I originally had Bare Naked Ladies winning this one. I am changing it. I am going Unnecessary Roughness as well. Just looking at Bare Naked Ladies team, he has, I think, 5 players on IR for IDPs. 5 IDPs on IR, and he has 1 offensive player also on IR as well. I mean, looking at who he could drop, I mean, he could drop Kerryon Johnson or maybe Benjamin, but the question is it even worth it? I know he told me last week to look at his bench and let him know. So I mean, it kind of started a little problem, but I was just having a little fun with him. But yeah, I mean, there's really no way to pick up for him as well. So his team is getting injured, and I mean, he does have those rookie quarterbacks as well. Zach Wilson is playing Denver. Zach Wilson might also throw 4 interceptions again and have more completions to the Denver cornerbacks than the wide receivers at the beginning of the first half. And that is also why I am going Unnecessary Roughness as well. Next up, we have Agent Steele, or as I tried to make the joke earlier, and you got a little offensive because you didn't realize I was making the joke, Agent Steele, Steal, because you are taking all those damn wide receivers from people, versus Bolt Up. And this is for first place in our division. I honestly don't think Lucas's team is that good. I think they're mediocre. He has only 42 more points than I have points for, and honestly, that is not good. I think you're the better team here on paper. Just looking at the two teams, once my computer decides it wants to load the damn game, you have Baker Mayfield, Mark Ingram, Hunt, and Chubb, and they're playing Chicago, and I think both those guys will feed against Chicago because that defense is not what it used to be. Versus Mike Davis, Eckler, and Roundtree. There's no D on there. And Roundtree didn't look that good last week. He got him 0.7 points. Where it's going to come down, it's going to be Baker Mayfield versus Herbert. Herbert could pull up 3 touchdown passes this week playing in KC, but Mayfield can also throw up 3 touchdown passes. And looking at everybody else, you do have Deebo Samuel, you do have CeeDee Lamb, you do have Amari Cooper, who's injured. But if Amari Cooper does play this week, he has averaged, since going to Dallas, 95 yards per game against the Eagles since going to Dallas. And if he plays that game, he will match that. I can see him putting 150, 200 yards against that Eagles secondary, 2 touchdowns. You do have Big Ben, who could be hurt, who might not play this week but it doesn't really matter because you have Jalen Hurts, who is a bum. He looked like a bum last week. And to me, I mean, he did rush for a touchdown, but without that rushing touchdown, he gets 10 points, maybe. And I think that is going to give you the win just because of all the better players that you have than he does.
Yeah, well, I agree. It comes down to the wide receiver advantage for sure is where I think I got the big edge, even with, I guess you could say Chubb, right? He's top 5 running back, and I got Odell coming back. We'll see what kind of role he has. Obviously, I have options. I can put Elijah Moore in. I could put Peyton Barber in if Josh Jacobs isn't to go. So there's definitely options there that I can put in the offense. Whereas you're right, when we look at his team, I don't think he has the options, right? If you look at the offense, his options are Boston Scott, Trent, and Cannon to come off the bench. So his roster just isn't as deep. And we know in Dynasty, the rosters have to be deep if you're going to win. I originally had myself losing to Lucas, if you could believe it. In this one, I'm changing that pick. I'm going with a win this time.
I honestly had you losing as well, and I am also changing my pick to you as well. And the next game, it's a battle of 2-2-0s. It's Zebras 2-0 versus No More 2-0. And who will remain undefeated? Who do you think is going to remain undefeated, Commish?
Oh, I mean, Chris and No More as well. Remember, he inherited this team, so we always give him a hard time about that, but we should probably let it go now.
Yeah.
He's a great team, and he's built the 3-headed monster here, and he was the one that built that 3-headed monster. So he gets all the credit. This one is a payoff game. They're both 2-2 lifetime versus each other. Obviously, being divisional opponents, they do play each other a fair amount. I got Chris winning this one. I think he definitely has what it takes to. His team's got that championship feel to it for sure. I know he's gonna love hearing that. But CMAC, and again, I talked about it with Brandon and the Architect, Tennessee playing all those weak teams in the AFC South. King Henry, right? We saw what he did for Krista and Storm in the LOC. Going to do the same things all year round, playing those really, really crappy teams in the AFC South. And I just see that kind of continuing. And the disadvantage right now for Susie is she does only have the one quarterback because obviously she drafted Trey Lance for the future. And I think that is just the mini decisive edge having Winston in that quarterback hole as opposed to Zach Moss, which will give Chris and No More the win.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the two teams just in general, No More has about 97 more points for than against Susie. And also, he actually had teams score more points against him, and he's still 2-0. But looking at, I also had No More winning this game. But the funny thing is, they play again next week. So they can be 2-0, going 3-0, and then they can lose the week next. But you're right. Having Trey Lance not start kind of puts you, in my opinion, puts you in a rebuild type of mode just because you don't have anybody else. You're not getting that 20, 25 points from a starting quarterback where you have to start Zach Moss, who didn't really do much, hasn't really done much. He did score 2 touchdowns last week, but on 26 rushing yards. And he played Miami. So, like, if they weren't playing Miami, would he have gotten those 2 touchdowns? And then she does have the football team's defense playing against Buffalo. And, same thing with Gibson. Gibson's also playing Buffalo, so I think that might hurt her. She does have Mary playing Detroit. But then, as you said, looking at No More's team, he does have King Henry, McCaffrey, David Montgomery, Mike Evans, who's going to score touchdowns, not going to get 100 yards, but he'll score touchdowns, Allen Robinson, DJ Moore, Gronk, Arnold. Like, his team from his running backs, his wide receiver room, his tight end room, his flex, his super flex quarterback, his flex in general, even though he does have Callaway there, are just better, in my opinion, from top to bottom. And that is why he's going to win.
Well, and there's only 4 undefeated teams left. And obviously there's only going to be 3 due to this game. And then with Vlad Jr. is one of them, which we did pick to win. And then Orange Crush was the other one who we both picked to lose. So, the undefeated teams aren't going to be around too long. So this is a critical game, and obviously a critical game in that division between divisional foes.
Exactly. Any final thoughts on Dynasty in general, or? Anything along those lines?
I think Dynasty, again, we're starting to see a bit of the separation of who the good teams are and who the weak teams are. I'm looking at a lot of the teams that are in the playoff hunt right now, with the exception of the Illuminati and maybe Subotica Spartans. A lot of the teams are looking the same. Even myself, I'm squeezing in there because of the divisional wins. So it'll be interesting to see if the same teams can get through again, or if we see more trades like we saw this week with good teams like Bare Naked Ladies just saying, hey, listen, I'm not going anywhere. I got to try to acquire picks and get better for the future.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you just got to make sure you don't trade away too many good players, so you can be competitive next year. Unless you are trying to do like a 2-year rebuild, get all those draft picks. But you just got to be smart about those trades. Yeah, I mean, good luck to everybody. I hope some teams win. I hope there's some teams that lose, and we'll go with that.
And I also just wanted to point out, you guys have scored under 400 points, which means you're averaging less than 200 a week in Dynasty. I don't think you guys, that is huge.
I didn't have a quarterback. I didn't have a quarterback, man. I didn't have a single quarterback playing. And I call that an accomplishment. I scored over 150 points each week with no quarterbacks playing. I call that a win.
Well, look at all the variables, man, when we look at that Hugh Jackson award.
We'll see how it goes.
All right, man. Back